Hi, welcome to Zenith Live 25. This is Jackie McGuire. I'm the practice lead and principal analyst for security at theCUBE. I am lucky enough today to be joined by Jay Chaudhry. He is the CEO of Zscaler. So this is your big show, Jay. Thank you for having us. Super excited to be here.
Jackie, it was a wonderful show.
Yeah.
Lots of great conversation with lots of great customers.
Yeah, and you guys have a handful of really big announcements that selfishly I was excited about because they kind of reinforce my analyst viewpoints. But let's start with zero trust everywhere, right? So I think zero trust really is where the whole industry has moved for a number of reasons. The attack surface used to be your company and your corporate devices, and now the attack surface is everything because we've moved to personal devices, remote work. So can you talk a little bit about how zero trust has evolved and where you see it going with zero trust everywhere?
I started Zscaler with the notion that certain users should be able to access only certain applications. They shouldn't be on the network. The name zero trust did not exist at that time, but we are excited to see that the market has picked it up. Unfortunately, in the high-tech world, when some new technology becomes very popular, and it kind of creates a challenge for incumbents, they all embrace it. Not the technology, but the word. So unfortunately, zero trust word has been hijacked. Every legacy company called themselves zero trust. But the simple notion was putting people on the network where they can move left and right, discover all kind of things out there, and attack them as a problem. That's fundamentally what needed to be solved. And that's what we solved, starting with users. User is a weakest link. Don't put people on the network. We have 50 million users from some 9,000 customers who actually go through our zero trust exchange, which I describe like a switchboard, smart OCN that connects into things. So that's really step one. Then how about the workloads? Workloads are some of the users we need to do for that. Our IoT, OT devices. That's why I'm a big fan of zero trust everywhere.
Yeah.
Our customers are seeing the benefit of it.
Yeah. I wrote a piece probably 2 years ago that said the Internet of Things is now the Internet of Threats, talking about operational technology. I think the target breach is the one people always think of where they got it through their Johnson Controls HVAC system.
Yes.
So, let's start with zero trust for the branch. So we saw this unexpected overnight move to remote work where everybody all of a sudden, during the pandemic was remote. We're now just starting to see a little bit of a shift back, right? So we have a lot of people bring jobs back on site. And so we have this kind of distributed network of branches, home offices, data centers. So how does zero trust at the branch level work?
Sure. So a typical corporation, say if you have 100 branches, they build a mesh network that connects everything to everything. It's like a highway system. The job of the network is that once you connect to it, it enables users to move left, to move right, discover application services, connect with them and use them. Now, malware has discovered that this is the best design feature of network. Okay, that's what they do. And how do you secure it? Well, you secure it traditionally with firewalls, by trusted network, by untrusted network. Once malware gets on the trusted network, it's a big problem. Then the final vendors will say, no problem, I'll sell you more firewall. Create segment becomes a nightmare. Our view is that each branch should be almost like an island. Sometimes they use the term like a cafe. Just like your home is not part of the mesh network of your company. It simply has internet connection. You're sitting in the airport, same thing. We think branch should be simply having a simple connection, and we make sure that all communication on the branch, not just users, even IoT, OT devices, they go through on exchange, our policy engine, and they're only allowed to connect to certain destinations or applications. So we stop any lateral movement of threats. It's becoming very important. If you survey out there, a large number of attacks happen because a user got infected, that user went wrong, connects the network, the malware went everywhere. Worse, the big attack was exactly like that.
Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because I worked at Fidelity for a long time. I worked on site at their campus. And just because you have a badge that gets you in the front door doesn't mean you get in every door. It doesn't mean you get in every campus, right?
Exactly. That's a metaphor I have used to describe it, because it can be confusing for people to say, what do you mean you don't get on the network?
Yeah.
Network. So your badge matter.
Yeah.
You get in, why should you be allowed to roam around the building? In the Zscaler 0+1, you get the badge, but then you get escorted to meeting room A.
Yeah.
And meeting happens, you get escorted out. Period. In this metaphor, room is like an application, a building is like a data center.
Yeah.
One-to-one connection.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah. And then it probably, I would imagine, when you contain people to just a few rooms, it makes it significantly more obvious when they're in the rooms they shouldn't be, right? Or when they're trying to get into rooms they shouldn't be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the same type of lateral movement is an issue within cloud, right? So you guys also have a new zero trust capability for cloud. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so think of it. We start moving applications to the cloud. We're building application in the cloud. First, the market tried to do lift and shift. And they realized that it's not very useful. Now they're building cloud native application, which is great. What with the network and security? They are doing the same thing they did for the branches. They extended data center branches. Now they're extending the network cloud. They used their physical firewalls. Now they're doing virtual
firewalls, yeah.
But it's part of the same network.
Mm-hmm.
And a single infecting workload in the cloud can infect the rest of the network. So we wanted to really bring the same zero trust there. So here is how we look at it. Your AWS East is an island. The Azure East is an island. They all have connectivity. When any communication goes, it goes to our exchange. They're not a net. That's part one. But per segments, how about workloads when they talk to each other? Or they talk to internet? Because they are like users. They must access internet at times. They need to talk to each other. So rather than doing east-west firewalls and like, our policy engine, our switchboard sits in the hyperscaler, say in the availability zone. And you can not only have selected communication, you have this beautiful segmentation that's designed part of our approach. You can say workloads in VPC-A can only talk to workloads in VPC-B. Really good. You can go next level. Workloads with tags or labels X can only talk to workloads with certain tags. It's a powerful concept we build. Our customers love it because they no longer have to deal with IP addresses and AC. In the world of network security with firewalls, it's all their own IP addresses.
Yeah. Well, they also don't have to admit that they don't watch their VPC logs very closely, right? That's one of the shocking things when I got into SIMs, was finding out that most companies just ignore their VPC logs because it's usually just chattering between cloud services. And I've even, if we're coming up against our license towards the end of the month, just turn them off. I've heard that too.
I mean, basic security.
Yeah.
Would you allow someone to get inside your building without having a proper log who went inside the building?
Yeah.
It's a basic stuff, very important. So one of the other things we did when our customers start using what we call Zscaler for cloud, it's workload to workload communication through zero trust. So we gave them a little piece of technology, we called it Cloud Connector. They would put it in a VPC, and the traffic comes to us where the traffic called and say, go here, which is great. And the customer said, why do I need to say that? Why don't you offer me this as a service? I simply want to point traffic to you, and you take care of the rest. So that's what we announced this week. We call it Cloud Zero Trust Cloud Gateway. A customer can simply go from their endpoint service, point to Zscaler. In less than 10 minutes, we can set up the cloud gateway for a given customer. We manage it, we run it, just making it easier and easier for our customers.
Kind of intelligently discovering how it needs to be set up, what services need to be connected.
Exactly. So
using your expertise, I imagine with all the customers you have, you probably know better than your customers often, like how to set things up. That's fantastic.
And we do it over and over. Customers does it once,
Yeah.
I learn.
Yeah. All right. So one of the things I was really excited to read about is this concept of a secure partnership with vendors. I was telling you before we sat down that a couple of the big incidents I helped respond to in the last few years were not the large company. It was a vendor of the large company that was allowed to take data out of the organization into their own organization, and that was breached. So tell us more about this, because I'm really excited about this.
Sure. So in this highly connected world, there'll be far more connections between an enterprise, the suppliers, customers, and partners. That's the natural way to work. Then there'll be users accessing applications. There'll be system-to-system connections out there. There are lots and lots of them. Now, enterprises are worried about what they call third-party risk or supplier risk or customer risk. So what do they do today? They set up site-to-site VPN type of connection. Well, traffic can flow this way, good things can flow, bad things can flow as well. And how do they do security? They send a questionnaire to the third party. Please tell us if you're taking all these cautions.
Or they get the SOC too, but they don't actually read it.
That's right. Yeah, great. It's not a good thing. And you mentioned about data getting copied. Obviously, that's a problem. But even if you don't provide them copy the data, then they're coming and accessing data sitting in your data center or your cloud somewhere. So this had to change. So what we announced is an extension to our Zero Trust Exchange. We call it Zero Trust Exchange for B2. So rather than your supplier setting up a direct tunnel and connection through site-to-site VPN, we become the switchboard exchange in the middle. The supplier sets up a standard tunnel, generally called IPsec, but it terminates with us. You set up a tunnel that terminates with us. The rule engine is a policy engine to make sure certain entities from your supplier can only access certain applications on your company side. It's a big win. But it was relatively easy for us to do it because in the world of zero trust, everyone's untrusted. We give only access. That's what one of the things people discover and say, there's no difference between my employees and third-party employees. They're all untrusted. They're given access. So this supply thing is wonderful. We had to do some federated identity support because identities come into parties. But it's wonderful. It's getting tons of traction.
It's almost like if you've ever worked in military or intelligence, like a SCIF for two businesses, right? So if you have top secret documents, you have to bring them to a SCIF, which is a secure containment information facility. Yeah. And so like you can only bring that stuff to this one place, and it's what you do with it in that place is better.
Exactly. We've done a lot of work, U.S. federal government, as well as now doing more of work with Defense Department.
Yeah.
They are embracing zero trust because they realize that the world is getting more and more dangerous out there.
Yeah.
And we are actually devoting 14 or 15 cabinet level acres.
That's impressive.
Very proud of. This is not just business, it's also mission.
Yeah.
Securing countries, securing critical infrastructure.
Yeah. I was telling people that coming to security events renews my faith in humanity, because seeing the way people from every part of security, people who look like me, people who look like you, people who are in hoodies and suits, and we all come together around a shared mission of making people safer and more secure. And I think the world seems a little crazy right now and a little contentious, but you come to a security event, and you're like, at the end of the day, we all have shared fate. We have a common, if one of us goes down, we're all going down. So that's fantastic.
That's why it's good to see the cooperation actually between various organizations. We do our intel threat intel sharing, the number of partners, and it's a good thing. And similarly, financial services company have actual entities to exchange some of that information.
Yeah. I think if I always talk about the art of war, when we beef our enemies, we need to think like them. And I've yet to see a group of hackers charging each other for access to information. They open source their tools. They
Actually, they're charging now.
For ransomware, yeah.
Ransom.
Oh, there's a service. Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. But, in terms of like sharing exploits and things like that, I think they do a better job sharing data than we do. We've also made it, I think, about halfway, if not more than halfway through this interview without saying AI or agentic AI. So I think we deserve some bonus points for that. But we do have some AI announcements as well to talk about. So you're wading into this, trying to provide the visibility that we need. So tell us more about it.
So AI is a wonderful opportunity, but it's very dangerous as well. But we're seeing that in all kinds of technologies in the past, technology for good, technology for bad. Just the impact of AI is so big. I mean, yesterday at my keynote, my talk was megawaves. Megawaves are internet in a cloud of the wall. I call AI gigawaves. And the only gigawave I could think of was the industrial revolution.
Yeah.
Discrete as big. So we are
electricity, maybe? Yeah.
Yes, that's very true. I look at AI, we need to look in several fronts. The worst thing an enterprise can do is, I will not let you go and use AI. Okay.
It's like telling your kids not to do something.
Exactly. So we are sitting as an international airport, a different income. So first thing we have provided our customers who are using extensively is show you what your employees are using in public areas. So you understand, then you can put policies around it that can say, my developers can only go to these 5 AI services in a public services. And then you can do DLP on that. You can use the services, but you could not be submitting a certain type of source code out. Right? That's one deployed properly. Now, more and more companies are building their own private LLM models and applications. They need to secure them. They need to provide secure access. So for that, we developed something called LLM proxy. So traffic gets directed through us as a proxy service. We're checking prompts, we're checking responses, we're checking security, prompt injection, data poisoning, all that kind of stuff. It's a fast-growing area. And we are actually doing a very good job to protect our customer. There's one other interesting area too. We all hear about agents, agentic AI. But this will evolve very rapidly. But the first use case of agents is, say, for call center. Yeah. They need to access main calls, customer support. Now, those roles are almost like people. Yeah. They need to have a policy when they can go, what they can do. For us, it's no different than zero users. We apply policy agents are almost being like users in the state. And we developed support for that kind of stuff to make sure there's secure access. Then you go step beyond it. The agents talking to agents. That funnel gets harder. And we're figuring out how to solve it. But since we happen to sit in between exchanges, the premise of Zscaler was exchange with right parties talking to people. We are in good position to tackle that. But we also operate. We are talking to Microsoft. They want to develop agent identity. We can leverage those identities, just like we have leveraged Agile AD, for example, working on that wider. So we believe in the ecosystem of partners. We do the best we can do, and we work with leading providers to integrate, so we deliver the best service to our customer.
Yeah. I think the velocity of agents is what's really tripping people up. Because humans make mistakes, but the amount of time it takes for one human to tell another human bad information, it could take, you have a few hours usually to contain that fallout, where agents, you're talking about seconds. They make, and it's probabilistic versus deterministic, right? So I always think that people don't know that generative adversarial networks, it's really just something generating something and asking a deterministic model, like, is this plausibly true? And as soon as the model says yes, things just go. And then, so we need to make agents that aren't gullible and insert circuit breakers so that velocity of mistake can be caught and slowed down, right?
Yeah. So I have seen amazing use of agentic AI with Red Canary, the company we apply. Right? So one of the things they showed me was they would have a person in the company managing software elsewhere. And this person, pretty well trained, will go through these 7 tasks to complete a given investigation. Take what 30 minutes. And they were able to automate all those tasks. And literally in less than a minute, all 7 tasks got done. And then they would spend 3 minutes human verification. They wanted to verify.
Yeah.
So while the agents took seconds, they spent 3 minutes, but still amount of time taken came down to 30 minutes with 3 minutes. So training is important, but as you said, we need to be careful as the technology is evolving, because since it's not determinist, there's some risks in some cases.
Yeah, and there's risk in humans too, but you always have plausible deniability with humans. You can just fire somebody. You don't have to admit that somebody made a mistake with the agent, right? All right, let's talk about Red Canary, because I'm really excited about this as well. So I started talking probably a year and a half, 2 years ago about services. So what I saw was this kind of trend in cyber risk insurance where underwriting standards were tightening. It was getting more difficult to acquire cyber risk insurance. The questions they were asking were getting more detailed. And really thinking about this in the context of growing up in finance as a stockbroker during the financial crisis, it was like, okay, how is this trend in insurance going to impact companies? And one of the things I came to was post-financial crisis, very few companies were trying to manage their own cash anymore. They were all using, and they weren't using broker-dealers anymore because broker-dealers don't have the same liability. They were using registered investment advisors that have fiduciary duty. And so what I saw is, one, I think we need an equivalent of fiduciary duty for managed services providers. It's something I'm pushing a bunch of state CISOs to lobby for. And 2, I saw this explosion in the opportunity for services, managed detection and response. So I'm sure you agree, otherwise you would have just spent a whole bunch of money. But I want to get your take on that, whether you see things similarly and how you see the businesses, kind of the symbiosis there.
And so 2 things. 1, we do need to fix the core security and exchange.
Yeah.
You can't have trusted network and firewalls and VPN sitting or everywhere. So the adoption of Zero Trust is happening. That's a wonderful thing. If you don't have that, the managed detection and response won't do a whole bit of help, but not enough. Now, but once you do, you actually get some of the best telemetry capability, because traditionally, many times people have taken telemetry PDR, which is good, but the firewall logs generally are pretty useless. They're short logs. They don't do TLS inspections, so there's nothing in it. But the Zscaler Zero Trust, we do TLS inspection. The logs are very powerful. It actually has the full URL in. URL has lots of information, and in fact, before anything bad happens, often the reconnaissance is what is seen. We are recording reconnaissance activity as well. Mm-hmm. So as Zscaler logs in some of the selected third-party groups go to a SIM solution, as they go there, we can find a lot of useful information, like potential trends or potential compromise and everything. So our customers have asked now, so you create all the useful television in that space. So when we came up with that Canary, we were surprised to find how good that these agentic technology have tons of expertise. And they're able to do a lot of work that customers are finding hard to do. There's a shortage of security experts out there. And even if you do, kind of things change, people move around. So a third party being able to go and say, I will manage and do the detection response for you is a powerful thing. From an insurance point of view, you're already seeing Zscaler customers getting lower premium because they're able to show that I have implemented Zero Trust.
I heard a sneak peek of this. I'm really excited to talk about this more in a few weeks.
It's happening because the example you mentioned, which is common today, the insurance company says, complete this 2-page form. Do you do this? Do you do this? Do you do this? Come on. It's not blah, blah.
Yeah.
But being able to get the risk score at the customer is what we are actually working some of these companies up to kill. So when we are looking at all the risk, if you look at MDR service or related services, they should be creating the overall risk of a business. When you have credit risk score for consumers or companies, why shouldn't you have risks?
Oh, I've been working on cyber risk quantification too, because when a CISO walks into an executive meeting and says, I need $5 million from Zscaler, they're like, why? Well, zero trust, obviously. Well, it's not obvious to the executive team. And they're not going to say, well, could you please explain what zero trust is? They're just going to say, we don't understand. We don't have the budget, right? So when you can quantify lower premiums, tie it to revenue. Yeah, absolutely.
So we are creating risks. We are working with many insurance companies who would use the risk scope to determine the risk premium they will charge. But it has to move to more professionally managed service. If you really think about what we are, I'd like to say that every new thing starts in the cottage industry.
Yeah.
Then moves to service, right? Even take utilities.
Yeah.
There was a time when you bought power generators for your home. You're wonderful because that's the best thing. And power utilities came out, plug in the socket, and you on. What we are doing for security is a service. And now what you're talking about is the next stage. Yeah. Rather than just customers having to manage these in logs, let third parties do it. It's a great hiking.
Yeah. And as we go along, I imagine with Red Canary, you'll be able to be a lot more prescriptive about your recommendations because Red Canary has so much experience managing things for customers that when you tell customers, hey, this is the next best decision you can make, it's based on. And I was also thinking about training their agents because they're managing and everything is consistent. It's the DeepSeek thing. The reason that DeepSeek was able to train so much cheaper is that China, to their credit, I guess, controls the information. The internet in China is not a cesspool of social media and false information, right? So you can, same thing with managed services. If you have some control over the infrastructure of the services you're managing, the data is a lot cleaner.
Yes, but a lot of vision is bigger than just managing services because we are fundamentally technology nobody. No. We want to make sure our security operation, our threat management, our exposure management is made available to global system integrators to manage security providers who can use our technology to offer managed services to lots of enterprises out there.
That's fantastic. Well, we're a little bit over time, but there was a lot to dig into. So thank you, Jay, so much for all of the extra time. I really appreciate it.
Jackie, fun conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to walking around the expo floor and seeing what everybody has to say. You appreciate it.
We got lots of partners at the expo floor as well.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
For theCUBE, I'm Jackie McGuire from Zenith Live 25 with Jay Chaudhry, CEO of Zscaler. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.